Hi and welcome. My name is Lydia Segrist, and for the purpose of this video, I'm going to discuss Andragogy, the 6 assumptions that this learning model has about learners, and then I am going to discuss how I can use Andragogy in my final project. Now, our class has been challenged, or I should say tasked, with finding a professional development. When I think about some of the things that I learned in college, and even some of the challenges I faced post-COVID, some people don't know what project-based learning is, or maybe they've never seen it incorporated into the classroom. So my hope is that by providing them with what project-based learning is and using all of these assumptions for adult learning, that I will be able to help them to figure out how to incorporate it in their classroom with their students. So the first thing is the assumption that, let me go back. First of all, andragogy is the study and it's a model of learning for adults. Now, in education, we learn a lot about pedagogy, which is for children. And in andragogy, they really push for it to be a student-centered focus. And a lot of that is because it is adults. And so that brings me to the first assumption. A lot of times when you are teaching adults, they want to know why they need to learn something. I know I'm in that boat too. A lot of time, not that I don't enjoy learning, I do. As a teacher, as a student, I love it all. But I want to know, how is this going to help me in real life? How is this going to pertain to maybe my future career or whatever it is? And so a lot of times, and if adults are going to invest their time in something, then they want to know the significance and the importance of how it is going to be in their lives. So for my project, I'm going to talk about why do you want to learn about project-based learning? How can you incorporate in the classroom? How can it help you to become a better instructor or teacher? Because this concept you can do at a K through 12 level, and you can even do in a higher education level. So it has a lot of benefits. The second assumption is that adult learners have their own concept of being responsible for their own lives and any decisions that they make. This pertains so relevant to project-based learning, because a lot of times project-based learning or problem-based learning has a lot to deal with the students themselves and the things that they are personally interested in. And so project-based learning, for my project, we are going to talk about how students can come up with their own ideas, their own big questions, and how they can investigate and explore those ideas. So the third assumption about adult learning is that we have to take into account the role and the experience of the learners. So while this is for my peers, essentially, and I have to take into account that a lot of them are educators. They understand pedagogy, and it is like the life force that they live and breathe. And I have to take that into account as I am planning this. So one thing that I will talk about in my video, and maybe have them stop and pause, is to think about some of their experiences in school and understand maybe why they had to do certain projects and whether there were pros and cons to ways that they did it. But I essentially want them to examine themselves so that as they learn all about as they learn all about as they learn about project-based learning, they can take those things and run with them. So the fourth assumption about learning for adults is that most adults are ready to learn. And they say this because a lot of times, for your career, for your home, for whatever it is that you're doing as an adult learner, you see the real world value in it. And so for my project, I want those that take this development class for project-based learning to see just how beneficial this can be for them and for their students. Now, the fifth assumption is that adult learners are life-centered in their orientation to learning. So this means that adults tend to be motivated to learn when it helps them in real life situations. So we've talked about that. Careers. That is usually the number one thing for adults is their career. If you ask me, there's a lot of things in life that I like to learn that have nothing to do with actual education. I love being a graduate student, but There's other things in life that I learned, like I'll give you an example. I love to crochet. I learned how to do that because I wanted to meet a need in a little girl's life who had leukemia. And so I started this whole journey to learn. But the thing is, life situations brought me there. So one thing that I'm going to do in my final project is for the teachers and those that are taking it to understand and define those real life situations that they can draw upon, not only in themselves, but for their students. And then the final assumption is that adult learners are primarily motivated by internal pressures. That's their self-esteem. That's anything, they feel about themselves as a learner. Sometimes those internal pressures come from lack of resources, and sometimes time constraints. As adults, we wear a lot of hats. As teachers, we wear a lot of hats, and as people, we wear a lot of hats. And so those time constraints can be a big factor in what can keep us from learning or for learning. If we have a lot more time on our hands, we're more likely to learn things. So for my final project, I'm going to discuss with them in project-based learning some of the ways that their students might feel those pressures, and then some of the ways that they might feel pressure as they're going through this training, because there might be times where we don't have time, but we have to make time as much as we can to better ourselves and our careers. So I want to say thank you so much for tuning in. I hope that you find this video helpful, and I hope that I explain all of the assumptions to the very best of my ability. Thank you.